Pull up a chair, friend. The fire is warm, the keg is full, and tonight we speak of a guild whose name sounds less like a heroic banner and more like something written at the bottom of a raid report. Weaponized Incompetence. Ah yes, not the cleanest pull, not the quietest raid, not always the smoothest countdown ever spoken beneath Elune's moonlight, but somehow Weaponized Incompetence wins the day. On the realm of Elune, where moonlight touches armor, trees whisper ancient secrets, and someone is always asking, "Wait, are we pulling this, boss, or are we still explaining it?" There exists a guild unlike any other. A guild built not only on damage meters, raid nights, mythic keys, and world content, but on friendship, laughter, questionable pathing, emergency battle reses, and the sacred belief that if everyone is confused together, that still counts as teamwork. This is Weaponized Incompetence, a guild whose very name tells you three things immediately. First, mistakes will happen. Second, they have accepted this. And third, they have somehow turned it into a raid strategy. Some guilds march into battle like a disciplined army. Weaponized Incompetence enters like someone accidentally hit auto-run, pulled 2 extra packs, and yelled, "I meant to do that!" And then, somehow, they survive. At the center of this glorious, slightly smoking machine stands Cupcakemeow. Yes, Cupcakemeow, a name that sounds sweet, harmless, and perhaps likely to offer you a baked good. But do not be fooled, friend. Behind every successful guild is someone who has survived more roster questions, raid absences, late sign-ups, missing enchants, forgotten flasks, Discord confusion, and "sorry, my cat stepped on my keyboard" excuses than any mortal should endure. Cupcake is the steady hand in the storm, the keeper of the calendar, the voice that says, "Okay everyone, ready check," the second voice that says, "No, really, click ready," and the third voice, moments later, that says, "Who pulled?" Every guild needs leadership, but Weaponized Incompetence needs something stronger. It needs patience. It needs humor. It needs someone who can look at a wipe, take a breath, and say, "All right, that was practice. Now let's actually kill it." And that, friend, is not just leadership. That is survival craft. Now, friend, this tale is not told from far away. No, no. Someguy is not merely watching this guild from the outside, peeking through the tavern window with a mug in one hand and questions in the other. Someguy was welcomed into Weaponized Incompetence as one of their own. A Brewmaster tank, which of course means standing in front of very large monsters while pretending everything is completely under control. And like many great Warcraft stories, this one began with a raid. Crown of the Cosmos. Someguy and Gigaguns were trying to complete the fight. The goal was simple. Get in, do the mechanics, defeat the boss, celebrate victory. Simple. Of course, as every raider knows, the word simple has caused more wipes than any boss mechanic ever created. The fight was tough, the pulls were messy, the room was chaotic, and eventually it reached that sacred moment in every adventurer's journey where someone says, "We may need help." That is when Cupcake reached out to the guild. Not with hesitation, not with annoyance, not with the heavy sigh of someone who has seen too much, but with that rare guild spirit that says, "Bring them in, we'll help." And help they did. Weaponized Incompetence showed up ready and willing, patient through the wipes, patient through the learning, patient through the chaos. patient through the moments where everyone knew exactly what to do, right after it had already gone wrong. And let me tell you, friend, patience during progression is not a small thing. That is not just a raid trait. That is a guild virtue. The pulls were not always clean. The room was not always calm. The strategy was not always graceful. But the guild stayed, again and again, pull after pull, wipe after wipe. No one disappeared. No one gave up. No one said, "Well, good luck with that." They stayed. They helped. They laughed. They endured. And then came the final moments. The kind of moment where the boss is low, the floor is dangerous, cooldowns are gone, and everyone's voice gets just a little bit louder. One by one, the brave fell. The raid frames dimmed. The floor became decorated with the bodies of champions who had absolutely meant to dodge that. And in the smoke, the panic, and the moonlit madness, only two remained standing. Someguy and Slashya. A Brewmaster tank and one final ally, holding the line, swinging, dodging, surviving, and probably wondering why everyone else had chosen such a dramatic time to take a nap. The boss still stood. The raid watched from the floor with the ancient wisdom of the defeated. And somehow, the fight was finished. That was the moment Someguy learned what weaponized incompetence truly was. Not perfect, not impatient, not the kind of guild that disappears after one bad pull. They stayed, they helped, they laughed, they endured. And when the final blow landed, they did not just help finish a raid, they opened the door. That is how Someguy came to the guild. Not through a grand recruitment speech, not through a flawless performance, not through a perfectly clean kill where everyone stood exactly where they were supposed to. No, friend. Someguy joined through wipes, through patience, through teamwork, through a final ridiculous moment where only two were left standing. And somehow, weaponized incompetence won the day. Now, let us be clear. This is not a tale of failure. Oh, no, no, no. Weaponized incompetence may laugh at itself, but the bosses are not laughing for long. This is a guild that raids. This is a guild that runs keys. This is a guild that steps into world content, social nights, progression pushes, and whatever strange adventure the community decides is a good idea that week. And like many great Warcraft families, they carry two truths at the same time. They are friendly, and they are dangerous. That is a rare combination, friend. Some guilds are sharp as blades, but cold as ice crown. Some are warm as a tavern, but collapse the moment a boss asks them to move left. Weaponized incompetence found the sacred middle path, kind enough to help, stubborn enough to progress, friendly enough to laugh, focused enough to win, and chaotic enough to make the journey memorable. Because a good guild is not measured only by how quickly it kills a boss. It is measured by what happens after the wipe. Do they blame? Do they vanish? Do they go silent? Or do they laugh, repair, explain the mechanic again, and pull one more time? Weaponized incompetence pulls one more time. And somehow, that is usually where the story gets good. Of course, no guild legend is complete without a vault, a guild bank, a sacred chamber of preparation, generosity, and mysterious leftovers from expansions long past. Open the vault of weaponized incompetence, and what do you find? Flasks, food, materials, crafting supplies, possibly a stack of items nobody has touched since Cataclysm. Maybe a note that says, "Do not remove unless for raid." Maybe another note underneath it that says, "Who took all the feasts?" But this, my friend, is how a guild survives. Not only through the player who tops the meters, not only through the tank who knows where to point the boss, not only through the healer who whispers a prayer every time someone stands in the swirlies, but through the quiet heroes, the crafters, the farmers, the ones who fill the bank, the ones who make the flasks, the ones who provide the feast, the ones who say nothing when half the raid forgot consumables, because deep down they knew this day would come. These are the unsung champions of every guild, the people who make sure the raid is ready before the raid even begins, the ones who turn gathering into generosity, crafting into support, and preparation into victory. Weaponized Incompetence has those heroes, probably with slightly suspicious bags full of herbs. And friend, never underestimate a guild with good crafters. A sharp blade wins battles. A full flask tab wins raid nights. Now, there is one achievement that must be spoken of carefully. One chapter in the guild's history that raises more questions than answers. One campaign so strange, so unnecessary, so deeply Warcraft that we must lower our voices out of respect. Critter Kill Squad. Yes, 50,000 critters gone. Now, I do not know what the squirrels did. I do not know what the rabbits knew. I do not know which frog looked at the guild wrong. But somewhere, somehow, Weaponized Incompetence decided that the small creatures of Azeroth had enjoyed peace for too long. Picture it, a quiet forest, soft moonlight, a peaceful rabbit nibbling grass. Then suddenly, a full guild group crests the hill. Cooldowns ready, war drums sounding. Someone yells, "Focus, Skull!" The rabbit had no chance. Was it necessary? Probably not. Was it efficient? Unclear. Was it weaponized incompetence? Absolutely. And that is the beauty of this guild. They do not merely chase victory. They collect stories. The kind of stories that begin with, "Remember when?" and end with everyone laughing too hard to explain it properly. Every guild has boss kills. Every guild has raid nights. But not every guild has a chapter in its history that makes nearby squirrels nervous. Now, let us speak of raid night, the sacred window, the gathering of the brave, the logging in, the checking of talents, the asking if everyone has food, the long silence that follows. The countdown begins. 5, 4, 3. Someone says, "Wait." 2, 1. The boss is pulled anyway. And then comes the dance. The tank braces. The healers question their life choices. The damage dealers chase glory, parse dreams, and occasionally the wrong ad. Someone stands exactly where they should not. Someone else says, "That mechanic was invisible on my screen." A battle res goes out, then another. Then someone asks if they should release. No, never release. Not until the raid leader's soul has fully left their body. But then something happens. Health bars stabilize. The boss drops lower. The panic becomes focus. The mistakes become adjustments. The chaos becomes rhythm. And suddenly, that messy pull, that ridiculous, noisy, questionable pull, becomes the kill. And when the achievement flashes, nobody remembers the perfect strategy. They remember the laugh. They remember the save. They remember the clutch heal. They remember the person who screamed because they lived with 1% health. They remember the final two standing when all seemed lost. They remember Someguy and Slasher holding the line. They remember Cupcake saying, "See? Easy." Easy, of course. That is the spirit of weaponized incompetence, not perfection, persistence, not silence, laughter, not flawless execution. Community strong enough to survive flawed execution. And there is something very Warcraft about that, because Azeroth has never truly belonged to the perfect. It belongs to the stubborn, the ones who come back after the wipe, the ones who repair their armor, refill their drinks and say, "Again." And so, when people hear the name Weaponized Incompetence, they may laugh. Good, they are supposed to. The name is a warning and an invitation. It says, we may pull extra, we may take the scenic route, we may ask questions that should have been answered before the ready check. We may have one person who swears they were definitely out of the fire. But we will show up. We will help each other. We will laugh. We will improve. And somehow, some way, the boss will die. That is not incompetence, friend. That is a weapon. So raise a mug to Cupcake, keeper of the chaos, to Gigaguns, who stood beside Someguy when the crown of the cosmos still needed finishing, to Slasher, who remained standing in the final moments when the room had become less of a battlefield and more of a very expensive graveyard, to the raiders who arrive with courage, snacks, and only some of their enchants, to the key runners who say, "This route is safe," moments before everything goes wrong, to the crafters, the farmers, the bank stalkers, the flask makers, and the feast droppers, to the critter kill squad, whose crimes against squirrels shall not be forgotten, and to Weaponized Incompetence of Elune, the guild that welcomed Someguy not because the pull was perfect, but because the fight was worth finishing together. Not the cleanest pull, not the quietest raid, not always the smoothest plan. But when the smoke clears, the loot drops, and someone asks, "How did we survive that?" There is only one answer. Weaponized incompetence wins the day. Until next time, friend, keep your mug full, keep your hearthstone close, and if the pull goes sideways, make sure it goes sideways with people worth laughing beside. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, click the sub and notifications button. Also, check out the Amani series. The first 2 episodes are posted here and here. Good night, you lovely people. Disclaimer. This video is a fan-made Guild Spotlight and lighthearted community lore piece created for entertainment. World of Warcraft and all related names, races, classes, locations, raids, and intellectual property belong to Blizzard Entertainment. This is not official canon, not endorsed by Blizzard, and is intended only as a fun tribute to the players and community of Weaponized Incompetence.